Coming up next, it's the revenge of a deep cut. We've got an interview with an all-time legend who had 36 hits between his group and his solo career. Huge. Only one of those songs hit number one, though, and it's insane how it happened. The eventual number one hit was originally a forgotten deep cut from an album. Nobody thought it was anything special. In fact, the singer and his group released 7 albums over the next 3 years after the album with this forgotten song fell out of the charts. Then one day, a lady that worked for their label in the UK chose that 3-year-old deep cut as a single. This was in a place where the group had only had a few hits. It went straight to number one, and then so it was released in America. It did the exact same thing. It became his only number one hit and the only major hit to feature a bassoon. Coming up next, the legend tells us the story. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you ever wanted to walk into a book like Gumby and Pokey did on the Gumby Show back in the day, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe right now. Click the white button and click the bell so you always know when our latest and greatest come out. Nostalgia all the time. Also, make sure to go to professorofrock.com to sign up for our videos and our interviews there and our live streams. You're going to love it. So it's time for another edition of our series, Revelations, where artists go deep into their greatest songs and their greatest albums, stories you won't find anywhere else. Today, we've got a great story. It's actually the second part of my interview with a legend's legend, one of the most iconic voices and lyricists of all time. Hell of a producer as well, the legendary Smokey Robinson. And he has some great stories to tell on this one, including the improbable story of his one and only number one hit. I mean, if you count up all of the hits that Smokey had in his solo career and with the Miracles, he had 36. And the only one to hit number one was Tears of a Clown. And it's an insane story. First of all, the music was written by Stevie Wonder with a Motown producer named Hank Cosby. But he couldn't get the lyrics down, so he gave it to Smokey, who listened to it, and he thought that the music sounded like a circus. That inspired the lyrics. He'll tell you about that. But the song was released on the 1967 album Make It Happen, but it was never released as a single. Nobody thought it had hit potential. It's just a deep cut. So Smokey and the Miracles, they moved on. The song was forgotten. A rare pop song to use a bassoon, but just a forgotten album cut. Fast forward 3 years later, 7 albums later, including a greatest hits album and a live record. And on the other side of the Atlantic in the UK, Smokey and the Miracles, they hadn't had much success there. They only had 2 hits in the UK by that time. In fact, their British distributor was so frustrated that he asked a girl named Karen Spreadbury, who was head of the Motown fan club in England, to pick a single from the Make It Happen album to put out there. She chose The Tears of a Clown. It was the last song on the album, and it was put out. It blew up. It went to number one in August of 1970. Motown was shocked, but they acted quickly. They released the song in America, and in December of that year, it rose to number one on the Hot 100, giving the group and the singer the first and only number one hit in their storied history, and it's the only top 10 song ever with a bassoon. Crazy. Coming up next, Smokey shares more about Tears from a Clown and his other massive solo hits, including Cruisin, which gave him fits for years trying to figure out the lyric, and his 2 big comebacks, one with Being With You and Just to See Her, including special guest Martin Fry from ABC, who had a huge hit in 1987 with the Smokey tribute When Smokey Sings. And in the late 80s, that tribute song from ABC and Smokey's comeback hit One Heartbeat were battling it out for number one in the charts at that moment. Stories coming up next on Professor of Rock. Probably my second favorite song you've ever done, and that's got a great story behind it too.
Yeah, Tears of a Clown, I attribute that to Stevie Wonder. We had Christmas parties every year at Motown, at the Hitsville building, and all the artists made sure that they were at home at that time because we had a great time at those parties. And nobody wanted to be on the road because we had such a good time at those parties. Everybody wanted to come. So everybody came to those parties. So Stevie comes in. I'm already there. He comes in. He say, Smoke, he say, I got this music on this tape, man, that it's a really great track that I've recorded here, but I can't think of a song to go with it. So I want you to listen to it and see if you can come up with something. So I said, okay, man, give it to me. So he gave it to me. And after the party was over, I took it home. And I put the tape on, and the first thing that I heard was bump, 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 ba-da-dun, dun, 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 dun. Now that is Barnum and Bailey.
Circus.
That's Ringling Brothers, man. That's the theme. You know what I mean?
Right.
I heard that, and I said, "Gosh," I said, "Wow, well, I'm going to write something about the circus with this track, but I don't want to write about animals. I don't want to write about trapeze artists or acrobats or any of that. You know, I want to write something personal." When I was a kid, Adam, in elementary school, I had a social studies teacher named Mr. Smith. He was a German. And he would, tell us about the world and different things like that. So one time he told us this story of Pagliacci. Now, to this moment, I do not know if Pagliacci was actually real or if he was mythical. Just like Pagliacci did. But anyway, he told us the story of Pagliacci, who was the great Italian clown. Because like I said, we studied the world in his classroom. He was a great Italian clown who made everybody happy. Everybody loved Pagliacci. When the circus came to town, they came to see Pagliacci. The lion tamers and all those people like that, they were fine, but Pagliacci was the man. And they cheered him, and they loved him, and they revered him, and all that. And then he would go back to his dressing room, and he would cry because he didn't have that type of adulation from a woman, from a woman that he could call his own. He didn't have that, so he would cry about that. So I thought about that, and I said, I'm going to write Tears of a Clown about Pagliacci. I didn't even call it Tears of a Clown anymore. I said, I'm going to write this song about Pagliacci, but I want to make it personal. I want to make it something that people can say, okay, this has happened to me. This is personal. So it's a personal thing. So that's where Tears of a Clown came from. We recorded Tears of a Clown in 1967. The Miracles and I recorded it in 1967. And I thought it was just an album cut. We put it on this album. I think the album was called Four in Blue or something like that. Well, I forget the name of the album. Anyway, I wrote the song and recorded it on The Miracles and Me, and we put it on this album in 1967. In 1970, a girl who worked for Motown in England, worked at the Motown office in England, was playing that album in the office. Tears of a Clown came on, and she loved it. The guy who was the head of our office in England at that time was a guy named Peter. And she took it to Peter and said, hey, Peter, we should release this here in the UK because it's a great song. So Peter agreed with her, and they released it there. And it became, I think it went to #1 in the UK or something like that.
Yeah, it did. It did. It became
started to snowball. And Motown had never had a #1 record in the UK. And it started to snowball all over Europe. You know, I had another record ready to go out in the States. And I told Barry, I said, I got this great record. He said, no, man. We're putting out Tears of a Clown here, which we did. And, you know, to this moment, Tears of a Clown is the biggest single record as an artist I've ever been associated with. Baby, let's cruise away. The longest song that it took me, that started with Marv Tarpling's music, he gave it to me, and it was so sensual and so sexy. You know, back in those days, you could make a loop of a tape.
Yeah. And
I made a loop of that tape of him just playing the guitar. And man, it would put me to sleep at night. Sometimes I just put it on and go to sleep to it. And it was so sensual and so sexy. And I wanted to write something like that to that song, to that music. And I wrote a couple other songs too, but they weren't sensual or sexy. And after I had that tape for about 5 years, okay? I had it for about 5 years. One day I'm driving. Once again, I come up with 3 lines for the chorus.
Right.
Yeah. You gonna fly away? Glad you're going my way. Fly away. Glad you're going my way. Because I love it. I love what? I love it that you flying. I love that. I went through a lot of those, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
One day I had moved out to Los Angeles then, and I'm driving down Sunset Boulevard in December with my top down. Now I'm from Detroit, and in Detroit, you don't go anywhere with a top down in December. You know, in fact, you hate to even go outside in December. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'm looking at this atmosphere. The sun is shining. It's 80 degrees. There are Christmas decorations strewn all out across Sunset Boulevard and in the windows and stuff like that. And it's 80 degrees and people are walking around in shorts and tank tops and stuff, you know. So I was thinking to myself, man, this is really deep. But here I am. I'm in December. I'm cruising down Sunset, you know, my top. Wait a minute. I'm cruising now. Oh, I like that word. So I turned my car around and went back home and added it to the end. And that's where that came from. But I had it for 5 years. Being With You was one of those songs like Shop Around, where I'd written it for someone else and got convinced to sing it myself. There's a guy named George Tobin, and George Tobin was a terrific record producer back in the day, and he's from Los Angeles. He had a studio in Los Angeles. I knew where his studio was. Anyway, Kim Carnes, who was a friend of mine, Kim Carnes, great singer.
Oh, yeah.
So he was recording Kim Carnes, and he recorded one of my songs on her, a song, More Love. Okay? And it was a big hit for her. So I was hearing it on the air. So I was saying, hey, I'm going to write some songs for Kim because, you know, she's had a hit on one of my songs, which I did. I'd written 4 songs for Kim, and I took them over to George. And I say, George, I got some songs for Kim, man. I want you to hear. And, you know, I think they'd be really good for her and blah, blah, blah. He said, okay, man, sing them for me. So I got to the piano. I played them for him. And when I started to play Being With You, I got about halfway through the song. He said, hey, man, I want to record that on you. I said, no, George. I said, you know, this is for Kim, man. You know, Kim, you know, but he said, man, I'm telling you, I can make a great record on that on you, man. He said, I like the way you sound. I said, no, man, we have to, you know, I wrote it for Kim, so let's just at least show it to her and something. He said, okay, man, if you feel like that. He said, come back to the studio tonight in my studio and we'll record a demo for Kim. I said, okay, man. So the Being With You that went to #1 for me is a demo for Kim Carnes, okay? Friends and my relations. Because after he recorded it and played it back for me, I said, okay, well, I like it. There it is. And I agree with it. So, yeah, I had written it originally for Kim Carnes. I don't care what they say, no.
And ironically, went to #2, was held out at #1 by Betty Davis Eyes.
Betty Davis Eyes, absolutely.
Betty Davis Eyes was one of the biggest songs of the 80s. I mean, it was #1 for 9 weeks.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's great. That's so funny. A lot of great musicians on that song too.
Yeah. George had his own band.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had his own band and his own studio and stuff. So
backgrounds by Robert John and
his
your
band
wife.
leader was a guitar player named Mike, and Mike was awesome. You know, Mike was an awesome arranger.
I gotta say, man, when in 1987, when the big comeback happened, it was such a cool memory. I was mentioned before, my dad and I, we would listen to Casey Kasem Top 40 Countdown every week. I grew up in a small town in Idaho. And so that was my window to the world, MTV and the radio. And when Just to See Her was moving up the charts, man, we were trying to, you know, together, put our energy together to will it to #1.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It was such a great memory that, you know, when those songs and One Heartbeat were doing that.
Just to see her again. If we take it one heartbeat.
That was such an incredible time, that comeback. One Heartbeat. I got to ask you about that.
Two guys were doing the album that had Just a Seer on it, and they brought me One Heartbeat. You know, Brandon had written that, and I thought it was such a great song. You know, One Heartbeat was actually a bigger seller than Just to See Her.
Kenny G on the saxophone on that song as well, and
Kenny G is my brother. I love Kenny. We put together and stuff like that.
Great solo on that.
Kenny G, you know.
Oh yeah. at the same time it's making its way up to top 10, you got ABC with When Smokey Sings. And I had a chance to ask Martin Fry about that. When Smokey Sings. Is there a more joyful song on the planet than When Smokey Sings?
That's nice of you to say that.
It really is. It's number 5 in the US, number 11 in the UK, and number 1 in the dance charts, number 2 on the AC charts. It crossed over here in America. But that, of course, the tribute to Smokey Robinson. And there were a couple of songs that came out, of course, Night Shift in 85. Yeah. And that was so great.
I think Rod Stewart did a song about Sam Cooke as well.
Yeah, he did.
Everybody's dancing.
Yeah.
Something.
Dancing to the music on the radio.
When you would hear that in America on Top 40 Countdown, Casey Kasem
Yeah.
would yearn back and play those songs. So that's how I got introduced to Motown.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
you know, of course, Smokey was in his big comeback at that moment. And he hit Just to See Her, which incredible song.
There's nothing I wouldn't do.
And then One Heartbeat.
One heartbeat at a time.
And it was awesome because it charted in the top 10 at the same time.
We came back out with the record and I went to Holland to do a TV show and they said, do you want to meet Smokey Robinson? You've got When Smokey Sings. I said, well, I'm never going to meet him. I said, look over there, it's his dressing room. So I kind of knocked on his dressing room door at a Dutch TV show. I said, oh, hello, Mr. Robinson, you know, we've written this song about you, you know. Here it is, and gave him the 12-inch and the 7-inch and did a little picture. And about 4 weeks later, we met him in Los Angeles. And by then the record, his record and our record were on the charts. So he'd had a chance to check it all out, and he was really complimentary. And he wrote us a letter, a handwritten letter. He wrote one to me, one to Mark White, who wrote the song with me. Yeah, he sent us a letter saying it was the first time an act and the tributee were in the same top 5, I think. Yeah, it's cool. We made pop history. So it's nice to hear it from him. Yeah,
I know.
So cool. And I noticed at the bottom of the letter, it said Tamla Motown, MD, William S. Robinson. He was the MD of Motown at the time.
Yeah.
So it was like meeting the king.
Oh, yeah.
You see, the song's about Smokey Robinson, but over the years, it's like making a bespoke suit. You know, I get to wear it. So it's kind of a little bit about ABC.
Yeah.
And it's a lot about Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Yeah.
Well, and I also love the vocal when you say, and when Smokey sings, he sings. I just,
those are just
I just love it.
Spontaneous moments.
Oh, totally. That was a song that, like I said, is so joyful. From the minute that you hear it and it hits with that drum beat, you're in full flight. I mean, it's just such a joy. How did it come together?
But I have to say, it came out of a really tough time for me. I'd been diagnosed with like cancer about 18 months before, and I had Hodgkin's disease. So after Zillionaire, we played I think we played Soul Train. We did a lot of shows, and then I had to withdraw really, and I had chemotherapy and radiotherapy. I'm fully recovered now. But I'd sit at home between going up to the hospital, and I just wondered what I was going to do next. And I started playing tunes I like Motown, like Smokey Robinson, and realizing how good you feel when you hear some of your favorite music. Music as, like therapy, or music as sort of the power of music. And that's where the sentiment of When Smokey Sings, it comes out of that. All those memories of going to clubs when I was 15, but also, you know, like a bird in flight on a hot, sweet night.
Like a bird in flight on a hot, sweet night.
It's kind of about how music could just make you feel fantastic.
Yeah.
Just take you somewhere else. So I wanted it to sound like that too, you know, for it to soar. That was the kind of approach and the attempt.
It certainly does.
It's funny how a very positive song can come out of a pretty dark place, but that's the beautiful thing about music. And, you know, all these years on, I'm fully recovered. You know, I get on stage and it's a joy to get on stage and sing When Smokey Sings.
When Smokey sings, I forget everything. Yeah.
But that ecstatic song came from a pretty dark place, yeah.
And everything's good in the world tonight.
That's a song that will live on forever. And your story about Smokey, that's just incredible that you got a chance to meet him and that he got to hear that song.
Yeah, I mean, to grow up listening to it and then to talk to him about his music, it was something special. It made me realize you got to be careful what you write songs about, because it's all a wish fulfillment.
It's true.
If you write about it, it comes true. Yeah.
That was so wonderful, man. You know, I got a chance to meet ABC. I was in Belgium, And I was doing a TV show in Belgium, and the producer did not tell me that they were going to be on the show, nor did he tell them that I was going to be on the show. And he surprised us with each other, and that's how I met them. But they were great guys, man, and I was very flattered by that song.
The last thing I got to say is, how the hell did you not get a solo on We Are the World? I've always wondered.
I want to explain that to you. We Are the World. We didn't even start to record We Are the World until midnight. I mean, all the artists at wherever they were that day or whatever they had done, Michael and Lionel called us, and we went in because we were going to record this song together. It was a great, wonderful, fun night, However, I had a concert the next day, and I had a flight at 6:30 in the morning to go to wherever my concert was going to be. So about 3:30 or so in the morning, I had to leave before they even started to do the lead vocals.
Oh,
because we were doing the chorus for We Are the World. All that. So they were concentrating on that before they started to do the lead vocals. So I had to leave, and that's why And
okay.
Lionel asked me, he said, "Man, what happened to you?" I said, "Well, I had to leave." So that's what happened about that.
Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Smokey Robinson and his classic songs, and about ABC and When Smokey Sings. What are your memories of these songs? Man, so many great stories. Smokey, one of the most charismatic people I have ever interviewed. It's like interviewing the Washington Monument, one of the greatest ever. Let's have a great discussion about Motown, about Smokey, and make sure to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. It's the history of music straight from the legends. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.